Do we have to talk about this? Mighty Number 9. Hi, everybody. It's 2016.
Should we just let Andrew do this one?
It's almost the 3-year anniversary of when Mighty Number 9's Kickstarter launched.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, like, honestly, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I'm just like, this was the second Kickstarter I ever remember writing about. Like, it has been 3 years, and that is crazy. The second video game Kickstarter, I should say. Like, I don't know, like, this now comes out on the same day as No Man's Sky, which is like this is a game that no one has really thought that much about versus a game with like more hype behind it than almost anything else coming out this year. I just don't know. I don't know what Deep Silver is thinking with Mighty Number 9 at this point. Like, it amazes me this game wasn't canceled a year ago, to be totally honest. I don't know. I will be very curious to see how this game does. I backed it because I was excited for it. What we've seen seems really cool. Like, I want that Mega Man style game. But man, did I want it like 2.5 years ago more than I do now. You know, especially with so many smart indie games in between now and then. Like, the indie scene is taking off in such a way that, like, they're really smart platformers. They're really smart, like, just cool sprite-based games. There's so many things that are out there that just have filled this need. Yeah, there's that term that gets thrown around, which is really just awful, which is, you know, lazy developers. And I don't think that applies here, but I think there's definitely been some bad business. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, I don't know. Time management. As much as I just don't know. I don't know, like, if it's just a matter of like too many cooks spoil the broth, or is just trying to be too perfect or something. But like, especially with something, I feel like it got funded because it did seem so achievable. You know, like when people come out and they're like, we're gonna make this awesome open world MMO, like Star Citizen, for instance. Like, that's an incredibly, massively huge, modern, ambitious game, which is getting done. It's also sort of like, has that still in the works? You know, this is taking a formula that's proven. It's just basically making more Mega Man with, you know, and with new graphics. I mean, that's what people want, though, right? Yeah, and like, I don't know what the holdup is. You know. Yeah, and like especially like, it's dumb, but like, I really wanted to play this on Vita, if anything, and that version is still
hasn't
not
that just
dated.
Been pushed to kind of later? They didn't actually say...
Vita and 3DS are later.
Just nebulously later.
I mean, that could be forever
I think there's literally a chance it never comes out.
I agree.
Yeah.
Especially like on Vita, which is super crappy.
I'm like really conflicted on commenting about Kickstarters because on one hand, we don't know what's happening, and on the other hand, it sucks for the people who spent money. But I think when you back something, you have to go in being like, I'm backing an idea. I'm not buying a product.
See, I agree with that, except that there's a major publisher on this game now. Like, that's the thing
that's when it gets weird.
That's where it gets weird.
That's why this is different than like one of the Double Fine games.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and it's like there are plenty of Kickstarter games that are like, they're managed by people who don't know what they're doing. So ultimately, it's like, we bit off more than we could chew. Also, I mean, when you get a major publisher involved,
right? It still started out that way.
I mean, yeah, sort of. Like, Concept is still someone who has worked with, like, I don't know. It's like, I back a lot of Kickstarters, and I'm sympathetic to that. I think the creator of Mega Man, who has probably worked with arguably almost every major publisher, should know
have
better.
Experience to know better.
Well, and it's also like last year at E3, it's like Concept is in Armature working on Recore. Like, Inafune is working on this. It's like, well, okay, this is a really cool 3D robot, whatever the hell it is, game, but what about that other thing we gave you money for 2 years ago?
And the other Kickstarter that he did, which was for
the one,
other
the Mega Man Legends one.
Yeah, like, it just, there have been... God, like, you talk about just doing too much at once. It's like people talk about like Telltale, for example, is like 9 projects in the works at once, but at least they come out and at least we like see them eventually. Like, this is just such a frustrating case of like, we've seen little bits and pieces here and there, but I've never, in the 3 years since this game was announced at PAX, there's never been a moment where I really had a grasp of what it was and actually felt like it was coming out. And that sucks. It's like, I put money into this, you know, and it's like, it's just a weird, frustrating situation.
So how would you parallel that to like The Last Guardian or Beyond Good and Evil 2?
At least those games, I mean, those are disastrous developments too in some ways.
The only person who put money towards that is the company making it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely, it is deceptive to take like, I mean, Kickstarter as a platform,
it is literally that people funded it that makes it different. But
I think it's also
in my eyes,
it's tricky with games too, because it is like it's an incredibly iterative process to make a game, and it's also like it's not a known quantity. I mean, you saw this with Tim Schafer, who took a while to make Broken Age, but like
split it
came out and it was gorgeous, but it was also like, hey, we're doing an old school, you know, LucasArts style point and click adventure game. That's what it is. We've got some ideas for it, but like it's not like. You say that, and immediately people are going to start making up their own idea of what that game is.
That's true. Yep.
The Comedy Button came from Kickstarter. Like, we funded that on there, and like we got people who were like, "This isn't what I thought it would be. It's different." It's like,
I think there's a Kickstarter culture is very odd because people fund something and then think that they're a stakeholder. but that's not actually what it is. Like to be a stakeholder, you've got to be doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of funding, not $10 for a pre-order. So it's totally different. And I don't know how much, like with Mighty No. 9, they consider community input.
And I mean, they made $3.8 million on this Kickstarter.
Yeah, so that's
3 years
there's
ago.
no way that all of the backers are ever going to agree on.
And that's
everything.
the thing. Plus, Deep Silver, because they have their own business interests, took pre-orders on a collector's edition that has nothing to do with this. So it's
also,
like those orders.
Let's do the math here very quickly for a second. Kickstarter is going to take, I think it's 5 or 10%. Taxes are going to take about 30, 40 at least. That's $1 million a year,
like $2 million
spread. Spread out over the course of 3 years. It doesn't matter
that much money.
Yeah.
No.
So,
don't get me wrong. I'm not even talking about budget. Like this is probably not even enough to make the game. That I totally agree with. But what I'm saying is, this is regardless of how much Concept gets or anything, even if this is 3.8 million $1 backers, that's still that much money that has just been nebulously out there in the world. With no reward for these people. Like that's my bigger problem. And like I don't normally like I used to disagree about Kickstarter stuff all the time because I love Kickstarter.
If they have tiers, like that's why it's so conflicting. Is like they have tiers. That's what people paid for. That's something that you listed there. So therefore you should fulfill it.
Yeah, and none of that has been fulfilled. Like
that's the terrible part.
I love Kickstarter as a platform because if you look at just the terminology, like kickstarting something, like you're taking something and you're giving it a pushing start and it's going, and that works a lot better when it's a simple concept, not something like a game, because making a game, it's not, you can kickstart a motorcycle and then it'll drive for a little bit, but then it will run out of gas because that's how that works, because it's a very complex thing. Whereas if you kick a ball, it's going to go as far as it goes.
I mean, and that's the thing is if someone's car breaks down and 5 people get behind it to give it a push to get it started again.
And that's called Patreon.
Well, just because you got to give it a push, you don't own that car. That's not your car.
Yeah.
It's still the driver's car.
You walk by a dude in the subway station who's playing the accordion and you give him $1. He does not owe you an album,
No,
but if he makes an album,
does if he says, "Hey, if you give me $1, I'm going to give you an album."
Exactly,
Yeah,
that's the difference.
And
like
this
is a mentality. If you, like Patreon is an entirely different platform because it totally is rooted in the idea of like supporting people who, like you're helping, you're patronizing these people. You're backing them. You're not backing them, but you're like. You're not an investor.
And it's also like that. It's that fundamental idea of like Kickstarter shouldn't be used to pre-order. Like that's just not what it should be.
I agree.
And like the frustrating thing is what I started saying earlier is that Deep Silver accepted pre-orders for literally nothing to do with this Kickstarter edition of the game. That other people now are waiting for something they pre-ordered that's also been delayed. Those orders are definitely going to be fulfilled before Kickstarter people get. And like this stuff is so nebulous. Like if you look back, I keep pointing my screen, which people watching the video version are like,
we can't see it either.
But no, it's like the tiers of this, all of these like a retro style manual and a physical box and like a documentary series and all these things. Literally none of this has ever been seen in 3 years. They did an episode 0 of the documentary at one point, but it's like none of this stuff has been delivered whatsoever, and that's so crazy to me because like it might be the most egregious example of a majorly backed Kickstarter that has just gone nowhere and fizzled out.
I would say no matter what they put out, it will not be justified.
Yeah, and that's just crazy to me. And like it's interesting because this week the co-creators of Doom put out a Kickstarter and they had no gameplay to show. They had no prototype. They had no anything, and they started making tens of thousands of dollars, but they pulled the plug because they didn't have the minimum requirements to launch a Kickstarter. And so now it's much more stringent than it was in 2013.
Yeah, it's hard for me. So
I don't have a problem with the 3 years thing. Like if the thing is kickstarted and it takes 3 years, like we don't know what's going on. I think that's okay. I think if you're promising people tiers for backing a certain thing, that you should fulfill those. But the biggest problem with this entire Kickstarter, or the entirety of Mighty No. 9, including on Deep Silver's behalf, is just the communication has been terrible. They need to fix that.
It was so good.
Haven't.
It was so good with Double Fine. They literally had a documentary series that was like, hey, this is an episode about how we're all having nervous breakdowns because development is so hard. Like it was very obvious where my money. That remains one of the few games, that and Yooka-Laylee, that I backed.
Yooka-Laylee's the only Kickstarter game I backed.
And so it's one of those like, I totally get this and I totally understand, but like to me, I still can't get too mad at the idea of a crowdfunded Kickstarter thing because
I think that's it.
It gave me Broken Age, it gave us Shovel Knight, it's hopefully going to give us Yooka-Laylee. And if those 3 games exist and then there's 100 failures aside from that, I'm still fine with the fact that those 3 games exist because of this platform.
I agree with every word. Like, and to be crystal clear, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, I love Kickstarter. I will continue to back games on Kickstarter. I think some great things have come from Kickstarter. This specific Kickstarter sucks. Like, this has been a disaster through and through.
It is just the communication that sucks, right?
I mean, yes, but it's honestly partially the communication, but it's also like I'm very skeptical that 80% of these rewards will ever be delivered. I think people will get the game when it's done.
Yeah.
I really don't like Fangamer was involved in doing a lot of the physical rewards, and I am friends with a lot of those guys. I love Fangamer. I think they create really cool stuff. Again, I'm skeptical that they will even be given the resources they need to create the physical boxes and the T-shirts and like all of the thing that are listed here.
In a weird way, $3 million is not enough money.
Exactly.
No, and that's what Double Fine. Part of that documentary is them figuring out that a ton of the backing things about sending out posters and shirts and stuff. Like, holy crap, that's expensive.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that because that was uncharted waters. Then.
It's so like. So stupid. There was a day when Brian and I were just in his old apartment, just signing photos for hours, and it sucks. And it sounds like the biggest, most like prima donna complaint, but like we're like,
you guys
oh man,
had like a successful Kickstarter, right?
we did it before it was
And
cool,
it
before Double Fine. Then it was like, holy crap, we made like it felt like Office Space. Like it felt like when we set that up, we were like, we need $6,000 to buy microphones and recording equipment so we can make a podcast for fun. And then we made $39,000, like, and we're like, holy crap, what do we do with that? And like, to be totally crystal clear about that, to steal your cool terminology you just said a second ago.
Yeah.
I saw $200 of that. You know, like we got pizza for 2 years, and we got vodka, and we made a podcast. But like, that money disappears very fast.
Yeah.
It does not. It looks like a lot on paper, but it's totally not what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And like getting T-shirts printed and mailing like. The act of physically moving an object across the globe, like if you got someone backing you in Australia or something,
Super
no offense.
expensive.
Yeah, costs a
offended
fortune.
by
No
it.
offense. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say,
You didn't
I didn't mean to make fun of the
your home
shipping to your
country.
I'm
country.
so offended.
My grandfather started shipping.
Sorry,
across
I'm sorry the
Pacific.
ocean is so large.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm scrolling through these stretch goals, and I don't know. I'll be amazed if we see half of this stuff.
That being
It's
said,
a
also to be
bummer.
fair, you did buy $10,000 bottles of vodka. It
We
was
got
very
one. We
fancy.
got one
Yeah, you
very
should note
huge
that.
vodka,
Yeah.
and then we had to rent out a building to keep it inside of, so that the bums wouldn't go in and drink it all.
Yeah, I mean, this is the announcement says it's coming to PS4, Xbox One, Wii U, and PC. The stretch goals on this Kickstarter are for PS3 360 versions, for Vita 3DS versions. Like it's been a long time, right? And the landscape has changed, and I kind of wish they would just openly acknowledge it and maybe offer a refund to people or whatever. But
Again,
I do think
it's
that
communication. They just should address it, and they're not at all. And so everyone's confused and frustrated. And I understand both sides. I understand the development is harder than it seems, and that money doesn't go as far as it seems. But I also understand people were promised something that they haven't even slightly seen.
And also, this isn't Deep Silver's mess. Like, they joined way after
No.
this Kickstarter was a thing. So
Yeah,
it's like,
but
I can see why
you
they...
marry someone who has a lot of debt, you inherit their debt.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's part of it is
That's
that...
true.
That's why
I
I
just-
just don't fall in love.
If you marry a dead woman
get
with a lot of
married.
debt, you're a
It's,
monster.
That is true.
Yeah.
Why don't you
Or
marry a dead woman?
What if you're also dead, though?
There's The
Then it's
Corpse
fine.
Bride, starring Tim Burton,
He
directed
didn't
by
star
Johnny
that.
Depp.
But I like how we started this segment with Max being like, "Do we have to talk about this?" And then we
And then it
spoke
was
about
like
it
a
for
really
like
good
20 minutes.
conversation.
That was a trash fire.